Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Love the Convenience, Hate the Pandemic, How to Find a Great Online Pathway to College. I'm your host, Kathy McDonald, Assistant Director for Network Partnerships with the Florida College Access Network. FCAN would like to thank UF Online for their generous support of this webinar. I am thrilled to welcome on our call today Joe Houston, who's the Director of Academic Success with Seminole State College of Florida. Joe earned a doctorate in higher education from the University of Central Florida. He has over 15 years of instructional experience teaching collegiate mathematics in the classroom and online. A warm welcome also to guest presenter Dr. Brian Crows, Director of e-learning at Seminole State College. Brian is responsible for all aspects of online learning for the college, including course development. He has over 17 years of experience in online higher education leadership across student, faculty, and academic support, as well as course and program development. Brian has instructed via in-person, hybrid, and online courses for several institutions. Also, a warm welcome to guest presenter Diana Marquez, instructional coach and distance education instructor, Atlantic Technical College. With over 20 years of experience in education, Diana comes to us with a broad range of knowledge as a business CTE instructor, teaching in both the traditional brick and mortar and online classroom. During this past year, Diana was able to work with CTE instructors during the transition from traditional to distance learning. She continues to provide instructional support for teachers as they work with students virtually. Diana enjoys making online learning rigorous, relevant, and fun for her adult learners. Finally, I'm thrilled to welcome student ambassador Kim DiGeronimo, who's a student at UF Online, and she's going to help us understand the online degree experiences from the student's point of view. Now, first, to get us started, a few housekeeping items. First, we're all about learning together, so if you have questions, please submit them in the box, which you should see in your dashboard on the right side of your computer if you're logging in from a desktop computer. You can submit those questions anytime, so feel free to send those on over, and we'll get to those usually towards the end of the webinar. Second, please share what you're learning on social media. We love to learn what's resonating with you all. If you can please use the hashtag FCAN and hashtag TalentStrongFL. That way we can find you. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. All materials will be available within a week of the recording. If you see the handout section in your dashboard, you'll see that there are PDF versions of these slides and another handout. If you don't see them, don't worry about it. We'll send them out to you after the webinar is over. Now, I know we have some new folks to FCAN's work, so very briefly, our mission is to lead the collaborative movement to ensure every Floridian achieves an education beyond high school and a rewarding career. Our mission is to build a Florida working together where education is the pathway to economic mobility for all. We do our work in three primary ways. First is through our local college access networks, which are cross-sector coalitions of leaders that collaborate to remove barriers and provide more support for student success. Second, FCAN publishes research and data on evidence-based practices and policy opportunities to strengthen Florida's talent pool. And third, FCAN coordinates 4 College Ready Florida initiatives that provide schools and community organizations free resources to help students continue their education after high school. Our work is guided by our 7 conditions for success, which you can find out more about on our website. Today's webinar is a great example of many of these conditions, particularly clear information and guidance, multiple pathways to success, and lifelong learning. Now, let's get you all involved and share a little bit about what type of organization you are joining us today. So are you with higher education, K through 12 school district, a nonprofit, local government, or other? And if you're in other, if you can share it in the question box, we'd love to learn where you're calling in from. So if you can vote now. Let's give you another couple of seconds here. Okay, let's go ahead and close that out and let's share those results. So as you can see, a little over half are with higher ed, a little over 20% are with the district, 20% a nonprofit, 2% government and other. So great. Thanks, folks, for sharing. We appreciate you participating there. Okay, now let's get us started. So to kind of set the stage here, let's think about online education before the pandemic hit and then what we've learned since the pandemic hit. So growth in online college programs have been a bright spot in the challenging higher education space long before the pandemic hit. As Lannion Research, in partnership with Wiley Education, conducted their updated survey just before the pandemic shut campuses down last March. When we look at that data, it gives us some sense of how important online learning will continue to be in higher education once the pandemic has passed. So for students who intentionally selected an online program before the pandemic hit, they had three main decision factors that were instrumental in choosing an online program. First was affordability. Over 50% of students said affordability was a key factor in their decision to select an online program. The second was reputation and accessibility to the campus. Students want to be proud of the institution they're attending, and 75% chose a campus within 50 miles of home. That's a lot higher than what it was. It was 44% in 2012 and 67% in 2019. And what's really interesting is 50% of students were within 15 miles of the campus. That proximity meant they were coming to campus more often because they could. Students wanted the convenience of online, but they also wanted to be able to set up appointments with their faculty, meet with their study groups, and participate in on-campus activities. So, being close to campus. And they also wanted to leverage the reputation of the college or university with their employers or other employers in the community. And finally, the other key thing that they were looking for is the quickest path to completion. Online college students want the ability to apply transfer credits that they earned prior to attending and or get credit for work-based learning. So despite some of the headlines we keep hearing about, once the pandemic hit, online, everyone got put online and it's not as effective, that's not what students have shown us. When you talk to students who selected an online program intentionally before the pandemic, 78% of them believe their program was worth the overall cost. 74% of online college students want to use their mobile devices to learn on the go. They see that flexibility as an asset that helped them stay up on their studies and balance it around their busy lives. While online college students are often career professionals, about half of them take advantage of career services and other types of on-campus programs. So they want the support that on-campus students get and are using their education as a way to improve their career prospects. Finally, 58% used employer tuition benefits, reimbursement benefits to help pay for college, which again indicates that the majority of students who are going to college online are doing so while they're working, and they need the flexibility of online learning as a key benefit in juggling their various life responsibilities. Okay, then the pandemic hit. So what we saw when we started looking at survey results after was a shift. First, we saw accessibility to technology and the internet impacted accessibility. 1 in 5 people who stopped taking classes or chose not to enroll at a community college this fall said they lacked the technology or internet access to take classes online. A July 2020 SERU survey found from over 22,000 undergraduate students that 76% struggled with motivation for online learning, and 56% of students lacked access to an appropriate study space or found it distracting to be studying at home. Finally, a July survey of nearly 5,000 college instructors found that 60% of them said keeping students engaged was their biggest challenge in the transition to remote learning. On a positive note, that same survey also found that the transition did improve faculty's perception of online learning and might integrate technology into their courses moving forward. So as you can see, the difference before and after the pandemic really gives us a sense that, when a college builds a remote learning intentionally and provides faculty with support to create engaging learning experiences that leverage technology, the results are quite different than when we simply take an in-person class and put it online. That's why we've brought together our presenters today to help us learn what works. And so to get us started, I am thrilled to welcome Evie Cummings, who's the Assistant Provost and Director for UF Online, who can begin to paint the picture of what an intentionally built online program can look like. So with that, Evie, welcome.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, everybody. You set the stage perfectly, so I'll just add a few things. I'm proud to come to you from Gainesville, Florida, at the University of Florida. And so as my title slide says, if you're tuning in from higher ed, from local government, from K-12, pandemic or not, it's a great opportunity to rethink what you expect from top universities. Next slide. So this is a shot of our stadium. We're a little football obsessed here at the University of Florida. You probably know that. But I put it here to show there are universities across the country that are well-rounded, busy places that also have high-quality online programs. So as you're thinking about advising your students in K-12, you're thinking about yourself, you're thinking about going back to school, this is a plug that modern universities are embracing online learning. They were doing it before the pandemic, but they're going to be certainly doing it now. So you're going to have a lot of options. The best online learning programs, as kind of Kathy alluded to, are engaging, flexible, taught by experts, are accredited, and are always evolving. Next slide, please. What this means is you have choices. Our panelists are going to talk today about the types of things you should think about. But I wanted to just highlight here, UF Online, for example, we really focus on fostering a great learning community. So think about an online program, not just in terms of the academics, but also in terms of that community component. You want to feel connected to your university, your students, your faculty, your staff also want to feel connected to you, and that's something you should look for. We're currently supporting 4,000 fully online undergrads, folks earning their UF bachelor's degree with us through UF Online across 43 states, 16 countries. They're in Washington, D.C. as well. The vast majority are in Florida. And as Kathy said, we actually have about 1,000 students right in Gainesville. So there is that local affinity. Some students want to come to campus, study in the libraries, go to football games, but not all students enjoy that. You'll hear from one of our amazing students later in the panel, actually. But on our website, we talk a lot about this, what to look for. You're going to want to pick an online program that's not just any online program. I will say up front that online for-profit enrollment right now is surging. It's a little concerning to me from where I sit because we know that the 6-year graduation rate for folks who attend a for-profit online school is 25%, meaning only 25% of students will graduate at all within 6 years. We're also really focused on that at the University of Florida because we know then that we need to do better to welcome students through online programs. But like I said, we're not alone. Some of my colleagues on the panel will share more about their programs as well. Next slide, please. So think about obviously your career goals and the majors and how they compare, and also who's going to be doing the teaching. What will my transcript say? We're proud that ours will say University of Florida. I won't say University of Florida Online. And that's not a knock at University of Florida Online. I'm clearly a fan, but it does reflect that you're doing the very same work that students are doing on campus. You're just doing it in a different modality. You're even learning with the same faculty. So ask a lot of questions as you're looking for your online program, and ask this question: what will show up on my transcript? Next slide, please. And as Kathy also mentioned, affordability matters. Here in the state of Florida, we have a fantastic network of state colleges and four-year universities. Most of those schools have online programs. There are incredible rates for Florida residents, again, across our state college system and across our four-year university system. In UF Online, in case you're wondering, it's actually $129 a credit hour for an in-state student. These aren't the easiest to read slides, but there's more information about tuition rates on our website. But the reason I put this here was to say it's really important that you do the math and you think about how much does tuition cost, but how much are the fees? Sometimes you might see ads for different programs talking about lower tuition or a cap for a certain number of classes, but you're going to have to add it up and see how much is tuition, how much are the added fees over how many terms to really get a sense of how much things cost. And I'm already told that our audience is firmly aware of the FAFSA, so I won't go into that too much. This slide, of course, emphasizes transfer pathways. I'm sure you know about it already, but in particular here in the state of Florida, we have such a wonderful articulated, meaning connected system that you could start, for example, at Seminole State College, earn your AA degree, and then transfer seamlessly to the University of Florida to complete your bachelor's degree. There are plenty of other examples like that that also work with the University of South Florida, the University of Central Florida, and of course, transfer pathways can also take you across the country. But as you think about online, you can think about blending formats through transfer pathways. Maybe you're going to finish high school, you want to stay local, and a local state college or a community college is a great fit for you, and you want to go face-to-face. And then maybe think about transferring out of state online or transferring to UF online at the upper division, but still staying home, for example, in South Florida. So this slide is intended to just help you really think about the options that are not only online, but also transfer pathways, but then also the ability to blend formats with campus programs and online programs. So just to wrap up, I want to hear from the panelists, and I'm sure you do as well. We're proud to welcome you to the University of Florida. We applaud FCAN's mission. We were delighted to sponsor this webinar. We're actually accepting applications for a fall by May 4th, so we'd love to hear from you. And with that, Kathy, I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Evie. Appreciate it. Okay, so how online savvy would you say you are? Let's go ahead and launch this poll, and if you can share a little bit. So are you a newbie? Are you Zoom and slide prolific or proficient anyway? I can handle breakout rooms. I can facilitate robust group discussions. I'm deliberately forcing you to pick one. So tell us where you are in that spectrum. Or finally, I have gamified and or created simulations. I'm a rock star in the online space. Where are you? Give us a sense of how comfortable you feel with online learning. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and close that out and share results. So we have a lot of folks who are Zoom and slide proficient. Great. So you've got a great foundation on which to learn. You're going to hear some great examples today from our panel to learn more about how to take it up a notch. So with that, let me go ahead and hide those results. I am going to turn that over. Whoops. If I can advance the slides here. And then let me give Brian control of my keyboard and mouse. There we go. Okay, sir, you are officially in control here.
All right, thank you very much. It's great to be here today. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about online learning and kind of looking at it from a historical perspective, and then also look at it of where we're going in the future. So Kathy and Evie did a great job of giving a little bit of the background about online learning, and to kind of bring things up to the current environment with higher education. As you can see here on the first bullet point, the overall number of enrollments in online delivery courses has increased due to the pandemic. Overall higher education enrollments were down 4.5% for the spring of 2021 term, and that's according to the National Student Clearinghouse research. But prior to the pandemic, online enrollments grew by 5% during the 2018-2019 academic year. And that's been the trend that's been existing for about the past 10 years. Overall campus enrollments have been down, but online enrollments have been growing. And part of this is to address the needs of our working adults who need to further their education, either for new career trajectories or if they need a promotion at their current employer. And also, online learning has become more important in strategic plans at other higher institutions. So according to a Chloe 3 report, which is Chief Online Operating Officers, 94% of the CEOs had planned at least one new online program in the 2019 year. And that was pre-pandemic. So those numbers have probably grown once we have the next evolution of that report come out. One of the things that it takes for online to be successful is that there needs to be an embracing of online learning. And this involves everyone at an institution. It must first start with the institution itself. There must be a strategic vision and a strategic plan for how online is going to help reach the overall mission of the institution. And then once that plan has been developed, there needs to be dedicated resources. And I know Joe's going to speak here in a moment a little bit about some of the dedicated resources that we have here at Seminole State College. But those dedicated resources are not only the financial resources, but it's going to be things such as student support services, tutoring centers, testing centers, academic advising, different things like that that students are going to need in order to be successful and to feel engaged with the online learning. Faculty have to fully embrace online learning as well. This is done through the use of training, so that faculty know not only how to use the technology, but also some of the best practices behind using the technology to engage their learners in the online classroom. And since you don't have the ability to see necessarily the instant reaction from a student, what are some of those hidden contexts that you can look for in your communications with students to know that they're having some struggles, but maybe they're afraid to ask for assistance? It's also using data to inform our teaching practices. We're here to help our students learn. So it's important for us as educators to rely upon that data to see, are we meeting the needs of the students? And if we're not meeting the needs of the students, does that mean that I need to revise my course content? Does it mean that I need to change my approach to how I'm delivering the course content? Or is there something else going on here that may be outside of our institution's control, but it's something that we can do to help mitigate, such as Kathy and Evie have mentioned already, the limited access to technology. I know during the pandemic, there have been institutions that have implemented loaner laptop programs. So students that don't have a dedicated computer for their online learning can check out a institution computer to use for their online learning. And finally, the students embrace online learning, and they do this because it provides them the flexibility. We've already talked a little bit about the working adults who are taking online classes. They're attracted to the online classroom because it's flexible. They don't have to commute to a campus. They can work it around their work schedule. They can work it around their schedule for their family, taking kids to different types of practices, different events, things like that. And they can work on their coursework when it's convenient for them. And it also opens up more opportunities. There's an opportunity for them to maybe take a class that is not offered on campus for a particular term due to whatever reason, or when they go to register, all the sections have been closed. This gives them an opportunity to take that course online and meet the same learning objectives. So one of the things that Kathy had mentioned earlier was that notion about, the limited access to technology, and the pandemic has really highlighted that there is what we call a digital divide that exists out there. And it's just not the access to the technology, it's also the quality and reliability of that technology. It's also knowing how to use the technology. Most of us have become very proficient in using some type of video conferencing, whether it's Zoom, it's WebEx, GoToMeetings, whatever the case may be, just because that's our new normal operational mode. However, not everybody is inherently navigating towards how to use that technology. So we have to provide the resources for how to use that technology. And then a lot of our students are also sharing the technology with their family members. It may be that they're having to share a laptop with their students who are also doing remote learning versus going to the public K-12 school environment. They're using the same bandwidth as their kids are trying to do their remote learning and different things like that. So there's a challenge there that we may not think about as educators, but it's actually impacting our students. In a study that was done the summer of 2020 by the New American Higher Education Survey by the Global Strategy Group, 57% of the respondents said that they have challenges to having access to stable and high-speed internet. So as educators, we have to look at how do we make the classroom engaging for the students online while also keeping in mind some of those technology challenges that they may have so that we're able to address all needs of all students. 50% were challenged for having high quality camera and microphone to participate in live synchronous aspects of their class using video conferencing tools. And then if you look at this is one that really stood out to me. 30% of those respondents said that they were challenged having access to food or shelter. So going out and buying a new webcam or going out and buying a new microphone, upgrading their internet speed, things like that, that's not an option for them because any additional funding that they receive is going to go towards meeting those basic needs of shelter and food for them and also their families. Another study said that 44% of American households with income under $30,000 don't have access to reliable internet. So they're relying upon internet as they go out and about and using their mobile devices. They're relying upon their work environment to get access to take their online classes. And 46% of the respondents did not have access to a traditional computer. So again, they're relying upon tablets, on mobile devices, different things like that. Evie mentioned in hers that, online needs to be engaging. It has to be content rich. It's always evolving. And that has really happened with online courses. It used to be that online courses were what I called static. You went in, you had some type of reading assignment, you did a submission of an assignment, maybe a discussion question, and maybe there was a quiz or exam. So it was not very engaging. But now that has really changed, and just not due to the pandemic. And I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, that's already been alluded to earlier, is that there is a difference between remote learning and online learning. When I refer to remote learning, I'm talking about the students that were in a face-to-face traditional classroom setting last February. And then when they return from spring break, they are now in an online class. That is a remote learning class. That was not intentionally designed to be the best of the best online course for those students. It was done out of necessity. As we've continued with remote learning into the fall and into the spring, that's evolving and becoming more intentionally designed learning activities, which are the online learning. So what are some of the more engaging ways that students have to work with the course content and to learn about the particular subject matter? I've already mentioned briefly the synchronous components using Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, whatever the case may be. Within there, and you're seeing some of it today, there's the use of polls so you can get a quick feel from the students, get them to provide input on whatever the topic is that's being discussed. There's screen sharing, not only for what we're doing here, sharing the slides, but also the students can share their presentations with the rest of the class. There's whiteboards where instructors can work out their math problems, physics problems, chemistry problems, diagram sentences, break apart a paragraph in a writing class to do some of the editing, things like that. There's breakout rooms where you can go in and have group discussions. You can also go in and have the students work on a mini presentation together, some type of group project, come back and present to the rest of the class. They're in an isolated breakout room, just like they would be in an isolated location within the classroom space on campus. And then there's also the option for live Q&A, which we're going to have some of that at the end of this presentation as well. Some of the more engaging and innovative things that are taking place right now, virtual reality. So being able to use simulations in healthcare programs, for example, where you can actually get that hands-on experience of seeing what it's like to be in a surgical suite, for example, and seeing it as if you were actually standing there. Augmented reality. Taking Pokemon Go is a great example of augmented reality. You're placed into a different environment, but then you're able to look around, navigate around, look at objects in a particular location that you may not be able to do otherwise. So for an art history class, for example, this may be taking a virtual visit to the Louvre to look at the different artworks by the different genres of art, different things like that. There's adaptive learning. And with this is where artificial intelligence helps guide the student's pathway through a learning activity. So it takes does a quick assessment to get their baseline understanding of a particular concept, and increasingly presents more challenging questions to the students and makes adaptations on how it's presenting the information based upon how the student is doing. And then, as Evie mentioned, there's gamification that's going on in higher education as well. We're working now with students coming out of high school that they've been brought up on video games. So they're expecting that entertainment value as well with their education as they're also gaining the academic background. So gamification is becoming prevalent in online higher education courses as well. So at this part, I'm going to turn it over to Joe and talk about identifying a good fit.
Thanks, Brian, and thank you, Evan, for having me here. So my role as Director of Academic Success at Seminole State College is to find ways to make our programs and our courses approachable for students and to make the content something that can be digested and they can find ways to achieve and learn the content and make their way through the program to earn a credential. I think there's really three core areas that a student or their family or a mentor should be considering when it comes to selecting an online program. You know, we all have our opinions about how the last year has been with the pandemic, but one thing is for sure that it has thrust many institutions to robustly engage in online learning, and these programs are everywhere now. So how do you choose a decent one? Well, you should be concerned with program structure and course design, and you should do what you can to investigate those elements. In a moment, I'll talk about support mechanisms as well that you should ask about and find out what's in the program. And you should also consider the student characteristics about the student that you're working with and helping them to find a program that's going to be the right fit for them. The key thing is to be informed about the program before you get into it, before you enroll. And so looking at a program, I think it's important to understand there's a lot of terms and jargon used regarding modality. Right? You can have fully online programs or the remote courses like Brian was referencing. You can have online courses that have synchronous meeting times with schedules that on these days and these times you must be online. Then there's mixtures of hybrid programs that have some reduced seat time and those components, instead of being on campus, are shifted to online domains. And so understanding those different modalities, asking the questions, what do the terms mean and what will the student's experience be like, is really important so that you understand what are the courses going to look like and what are your responsibilities, but also knowing what are going to be the limitations of schedules and what kind of flexibility is built into the program. Just being aware of what you're actually going to be on the hook for when you enroll into these courses and into these programs. Are you really able to adapt this flexibly into your schedule, or are you going to have to adhere to a schedule that's been prescribed based on a course meeting time? But I think it's also really important upfront to gain some information about the types of assignments and the requirements that are going to be in the courses for an online program. Are there going to be tests that are going to be given, examinations? Will those be timed? Are there going to be proctoring requirements? These are some of the questions that people might not think to ask up front, but that will get into those sticky situations if a person has limitations on technology access. If there's an exam requirement that the exam's going to be timed and it has to be proctored online, you're going to have a functional web camera, a working microphone. You're going to have a decent enough bandwidth in order for that transfer to occur and for the session to be recorded. I think it's also important to understand, if that's going to be something that happens, the environment that you're planning to be in when you take a test or complete an assessment or an assignment is also important to consider. What kind of reliability do you have with your network, but what kind of distraction-free opportunities exist for you? If you're going to have to be caring for children, and is that going to be a problem if there's an interruption during a test, if you have to stop and take care of a family member? So these kind of considerations and questions are important to ask up front. And I think it's also necessary to talk with someone about the communication mechanisms that are going to be in place once you're enrolled in a program. Almost all of these programs leverage some kind of learning management system, like web courses or WebCT or Canvas. And oftentimes faculty will leverage that learning management system as a hub, and communication will go through there. But there's also third-party tools and platforms that are leveraged. Some faculty work with telephones and are fine with students texting to their cell phone. Whatever the case is, it's important to know what those communication mechanisms are, but also to have a moment of reflection with you and your student about how committed and dedicated will you be to checking those communication mechanisms, since that's the principal pathway that a faculty member will have to communicate to a student. Let's advance the slides, Brian. So once you select a program based on all of those characteristics, I think it's also important to take a look at what forms of support are integrated into the program and into the courses. All the courses will have some faculty member assigned to it, and understanding what office hours will be available, if any, to a student. And will those be online? Will they be on campus? Will you have phone access? Will there be Zoom calls or Teams or some kind of web conferencing mechanism? And going ahead and thinking about a communication plan for how will your student engage with a professor if they have questions or if they experience challenges, just kind of charting out what that pathway is. It's also important to know up front, is there going to be an assigned dedicated program advisor? Are you going to have an academic advisor that's dedicated to this program? Will there be an orientation that happens before the first course to help you understand how to navigate the platforms that you're going to see? What kind of financial aid is available, and how easy will you have access to communicate with individuals responsible for helping you to navigate that financial aid pathway? So those are really important support mechanisms to be integrated programmatically. And if we are in higher ed offering programs, these are important elements to advertise and communicate to our students about. We should be right up front with how these communication mechanisms are going to exist for students. As far as the actual courses, which this is one of the principal elements of my role, is integrating academic support directly into the course environment. So teaching assistants, a lot of people have had experience with if they've been in college, but a TA typically is a support mechanism for the faculty member. They'll work with students, but they're really there oftentimes to support the faculty. So looking at how will TAs be used in the course, how many students are going to be in the courses, and that should give you a sense about the balance and what kind of workload, or at least the student to faculty ratio, and the likelihood that your student will get a chance to communicate with a faculty member at TA. But also exploring what kind of other embedded academic support will be in the program. Are there going to be tutors integrated into the program? Because one of the worst things that can happen for a student is to be enrolled in an online program and feel like they're out there drifting totally alone when they have questions or when they run into a barrier with their academics and they need a little bit of help. Embedded tutors that are partnered with faculty and integrated into the course are a key gateway for students to access support, as well as embedded librarians for courses or programs that have a research-heavy component to them. Having librarians available to assist navigating through online digital databases is extremely helpful for students, especially if they don't have a strong foundation in conducting library and database research. One of the more innovative elements that Brian mentioned was some of the collaboration structure that faculty are putting into their courses, leveraging things like group chat and peer study sessions, but also designing assignments that have nested within them opportunities for students to provide peer feedback to each other as part of the assignment submission process. That's one of the ways to create engagement between students in an area that sometimes can feel distanced between individuals. But also seeking opportunities to have collaborative work inside of programs. Now that can be a benefit or a negative depending on the student and if they're interested in seeing peer collaborative work. But there's a lot of group work and group assignments that can be worked into the structure of courses and assignment design. And faculty are working to create those opportunities, not just to have a social dynamic, but there's all kinds of learning that happens in association with being able to work on projects mediated through technology, as we are all finding in our own work. That's definitely a skill that's going to be highly valued in the workplace. And then also looking at some of the peripheral support structures around programs. What kind of mentors and coaches are associated with these programs? Do they have peer mentors, or do they have any kind of mentors in the program to help guide students through the process as they progress towards their credential? Early alert is a mechanism that faculty can leverage if they notice that students start to become disengaged, or if grade performance starts to fall off, and faculty can designate a student in early alert, and that'll send a message to an assigned advisor who can reach out to the student and have a conversation about what maybe is going on in the student's life. Oftentimes, challenges that students face in the academic side, faculty will see that as impacting their grades or their level of engagement, but it's very often that it's a social factor that has nothing to do with the academics that's causing that disruption for students. And it's also important to take a look what kind of success coaches are in that program or at that school to help students find their pathway through and to answer questions that may not be specific to a course component, but rather about navigating through the college pathway. Brian, let's go to the next slide. And so that brings up an important element to consider if you're mentoring or coaching a student about kind of heading towards an online program, or at least a program that has online components, is that we should think about the student characteristics. And some characteristics lend themselves better to students being able to succeed and thrive in an online program, and other characteristics may not, or may be that they would want to make sure that they consider some of those support elements before getting engaged in an online program. Students who tend to thrive in online historically tend to be more self-starting, and they're able to work independently, but have an internal sense of accountability and motivation. Now, faculty have been designing courses, and this is a major element of online learning design, is to create accountability structures, to have weekly or monthly check-ins with students so that that opportunity doesn't exist for students to kind of fall off the radar. But having students approach a course with a set system for managing their time, for mapping out deadlines and due dates, and building in enough time ahead of those due dates in order to complete the assignments and stay up with the course. Effective reading and communication skills are extremely important. As a faculty member, I can't tell you how many text messages or emails I get that are simply a little glib sentence that says, "I'm having a problem." And that's the email, that's the whole thing. So being able to work with your student and talking to them about effective ways to communicate with faculty, reading a syllabus, reading assignments, and understanding instructions. But also having this willingness to ask questions when you don't understand the instructions, or when you run into a problem where you don't understand what to do. Having a ability to reach out and ask a question, sometimes that can be uncomfortable for students, particularly given the power dynamic that sometimes that they sense between faculty and students. But you definitely have to encourage students to be able to ask questions in an online domain. And even asking for other sorts of help. So if they encounter a technology challenge or a social challenge, if they have an ill family member, or if they wind up with a car problem where they can't get themselves to work, their shifts change. All of these things create challenges for students who are working in an online program, and they need to have the ability to communicate that with their faculty member, with their program advisors, because oftentimes there are mechanisms in place to support that student, or at least some other people who've experienced this before to help coach them or guide them through that process or that challenge. And it's also important for students to be a bit self-reflective, to understand what are their strengths and their weaknesses before they enter a program, and put in place a plan that can take advantage of their strengths and to be able to support areas around which they may have some weaknesses, and also to be able to take breaks. That has a lot to do with time management, but having a student with a 10-page term paper and they find that that paper's due 3 days from now they're not going to be able to take any breaks. They're going to try to hammer that thing out. So time management and being able to space workout and not become completely connected and 24/7 glued to an assignment is an important characteristic for students to be able to manage. Brian, I think that's what I have for our slides. So here's a few resources, and I know that these are included in the handouts. So if you'd like to learn more about helping students to understand online programming, finding some stories of students who entered online programs and managed to navigate that pathway successfully, or if you'd like to learn more about the programs that we have at Seminole State College and our partnership with UF Online, feel free to explore some of these links and reach out to us if you have questions.
Thanks, Joe and Brian. Appreciate your your great overview there. Now, with Diana, I think there's a misperception among a lot of folks that in the career and technical space, it's really hard, if not impossible, to translate to online because so many of the programs are hands-on, and yet you had to make the transition. So help us understand how you did so given the pandemic.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to everyone, UF and the Florida Career Access Network for inviting Atlantic Technical College to this webinar. I'm delighted to be here. And just to tell you a little something of Atlantic Tech, we are a public secondary and post-secondary institution. We operate as part of the Broward County Public School System. We're one of 3 technical colleges in Broward County, one of the largest technical colleges in the state. Our main campus is located in Coconut Creek, and we do have a branch campus located in the city of Fort Lauderdale. Last year, ATC served approximately 4,000 students in over 38 career and technical programs of study and about 17 apprenticeship programs. So, as others on the panel have already shared, this pandemic brought about quite a major shift in thinking for us regarding how we were going to be able to meet the needs of our students and how we could support our faculty in delivering content. Without a doubt, it is truly a team effort. And through the support of our district and even our administration here on campus, we were able to implement several training and support solutions. Our technology department, they provided 24/7 support to both faculty and staff. We were able to actually coordinate laptop distributions for our secondary and our adult learners. Our Office of Student Affairs department implemented a program of flexible appointment scheduling process, which provided students the opportunity to schedule appointments with advisors and counselors in a virtual setting. They also provided a variety of financial assistance opportunities for students, especially funding that was provided from the CARES Act. We were very fortunate to be able to utilize our instructional technology specialist and instructional coaching to provide assistance for our distance education courses. So we identified what we called departmental virtual learning champions. These were individuals that self-identified themselves as proficient in online navigation and use of a multitude of different software programs. And so these were our point people that were able to facilitate support for our faculty in that transitional period of time. We also were able to schedule weekly training sessions for faculty to help them transition into that virtual world. Some of those training sessions were weekly, regular timing. Other times it was, on a case-by-case basis. We also had a virtual quote-unquote help desk where faculty could log in and just, have someone there readily available to answer questions and provide assistance for whatever program they were using at the time. We also created an online repository where faculty could log in and they could access instructional information on instructional software that they were using. There were also links available for them to access additional resources. Some of the learning platforms that we use are listed here. As you can see on the slide, we have, we use Blackboard Collaborate and Microsoft Teams, Desire to Learn, Canvas, and Zoom. A lot of these platforms have been very instrumental in helping our students and faculty stay connected. Through the use of these platforms, content was delivered to our students synchronously and asynchronously. Students were able to access their coursework according to their individual schedules. We also had live classes that were conducted on platforms such as Teams and Blackboard, where students could come online and they could meet with their teachers and with their the other students in their class to participate in live learning. The breakout groups were used as a feature to help students collaborate with one another to work on smaller group projects, which also helped create that sense of community and connectedness that others on the panel have already talked about. There were also some other opportunities that we provided. One of these, it was the rapid credentialing program. So in response to helping our students continue to train for these, high wage, high demand areas in a shorter period of time in order to help them earn a credential so that they could join the workforce. And, especially as a result of the pandemic and, some individuals losing their jobs because of businesses being closed, and we all know the story. These rapid credentialing programs were very beneficial in our community. 7 of these programs are in the area of machining, automotive, heating and air, healthcare, customer service, and network support. We also implemented what we call a digital literacy program. So in response to feedback that we received from students and faculty, we learned that as Brian and Joe mentioned, that there's a little bit of a disconnect and a struggle with the comfort level in the virtual world. And so by creating this digital literacy program, our students are able to enroll and learn the basics of computers, of social media, of the online world, and of course, how to be a successful online learner. So this is a we call it a lifelong learning course. Students are able to enroll in this course concurrently with their program of study, or they can enroll in the course separately as a standalone course before they enroll in their full program. So we're excited about this course and believe that it will be beneficial to our students and to their overall success. So I'd like to talk a little bit about best practices in the virtual learning world and some of the feedback that I've received from teachers as to what works and what helps, and hopefully it will help you with helping to share some of this in your programs or as you counsel with students on what to look for in effective virtual learning courses. So one of the things that, pardon me, one of the things that is successful is, for example, creating a welcome slide in your online course. So some of our instructors in the beginning, when they were logging in, when students were logging in, you kind of, and maybe you've experienced this, if you're participating in a webinar or if you're teaching a course and you have students coming in and they're like, is anybody here? Is anybody online? And you have them turning their camera on and off, or maybe their mic is on or off. And so one of the things that has been successful is to create a welcome slide, something like this, where once an individual logs on, they see, yes, they're in the right place. It has the teacher's information, the course title, the time period that particular class is going to take place, and then maybe some instructions. So in this particular case, you see that I direct my students to make sure that their microphone is muted. I will play some music in the background just to kind of set the tone. You might have some specific instructions that you might want to share with the students. Other items are, in this particular example, some icons that for my students personally, they can look for. So if I want them to contribute comments in the chat box, I'll have the chat icon so that they know that they need to type comments in the chat. If this particular activity is going to be a breakout activity, I'll have an icon that shows them that this is going to be a breakout activity. So some of these things are helpful for students so that they know what to expect. To manage the flow of your class, you can see that these are some suggestions. There are so many online. A lot of them are free to use. Bitmoji is fun. You can create a Bitmoji of yourself. You can have a Bitmoji classroom background that, you may not want to use it all the time, but every once in a while, it just changes things up. The online stopwatch I love using because it actually very, specifically tells the students we're going to be spending 3 minutes on this activity and then we're going to move on to the next. It also keeps the instructor focused and on pace. And then ClassToolsnet is another great website to visit where it has a lot of free tools that instructors use to help keep things, interesting. I love the spin wheel because you can enter the names of individuals and you spin it, and then you can just randomly say, okay, Diana, you're going to be sharing what you learned this past week in this assignment, and it just keeps everything random. Other student engagement tools you can see here on this slide. Again, ClassToolsnet. Fling the Teacher is a fun little thing to do every once in a while. You set up a quiz, and then the winner of the quiz gets to fling an Angry Bird at an image of their instructor, or you could do it an image of other classmates. Kahoot is an online quiz tool also where they can use their phone to select the answer, and then it just gives you feedback on who got the answer first, who got the answer second, and then it shows the winner. And then of course we have TED Talks. TED Talks are always a great resource to use for encouragement and motivation for specific topics that you're using. We do like to, we like to stay on task, and we like to meet our standards and reach our goals for our courses. But, I like to encourage our teachers to have fun and to enjoy the process, because then your students will also have fun and enjoy the process as well. So, again, thank you for the opportunity. Oops, in the previous slide, if you would like to know more about ATC, please feel free to scan our QR code, and that will take you to our site. But thank you, Kathy and UF and Florida Career Access for letting us participate.
Thanks, Diana. And I want to welcome Kim. I know we're getting close to the 2 o'clock hour, but I do want to give people a sense of what is this like from the student perspective. So thank you so much for joining us today. Can you start a little bit with sharing what motivated you to consider an online program in the first place?
Sure, Kathy. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm a returning school student. I started my college education a long time ago and never finished. So as I am in the career force now, the workforce now, I work full time. I knew that it was going to be a difficult thing to try and balance work, school, and family. So pursuing an online education gives me flexibility to do just that, because there's not a set schedule of classes. I have that flexibility. Yeah, I know there's weekly commitments and assignments that need to get done, but I work that into my schedule. It's not the other way around. So it basically provides an education on my terms.
Yeah, great. So when you think about, well, I guess let's start with, what were you looking for beyond flexibility? What were you looking for when you were considering your options in terms of an online program?
Yeah, so I heard a lot of them actually today during this presentation, which was fantastic. So I was personally looking for something that was fully online because I was working full time. So a hybrid experience was not going to be something that interested me. And the university needed to have an online program for my major, of course,
Hmm.
which is business administration. So that was helpful. And I had previous college credit. I did complete my AA at Seminole State College, so it was important that those credits would be accepted when I did transfer. And affordability was definitely something that was key to me as well. But
Yeah.
really, I think the two things that were most important um, was that I wanted an education from a top-ranked university, a university that also provided an online bachelor degree. And so when I applied to UF Online, it was in the top 10 based on the US News and World Report rankings. And shameless plug, they're actually in the top 3 now and #1 for online bachelors in business. Go Gators. And then second, I wanted to take online courses that were taught by the same faculty that teaches the classes on campus in the classrooms. So that was really important to me as well.
Yeah. Great. When you think about what does it take to be successful in an online environment, because it just like any college or any university, there is no one perfect fit for every student. So, what does it take to be successful as a student in an online environment?
Absolutely. And I've heard it a few times today that access to technology and internet is very important. And yes, they certainly are. You definitely need to be self-motivated and a self-starter because nobody's going to make you log in and do your coursework. You have to be accountable to yourself to get it done. I feel that you need to be organized and planful, which I think is my forte. I'm very organized. I read the syllabus 2 to 3 times to make sure that I know what's expected of me and that I understand the time commitment that I need to have each week. And then I look at my overall schedule and carve out the time to make sure that I have that dedicated time to get everything done. And then I did hear also during the presentation about a workspace. You need to create a great workspace, somewhere you can go that's personalized to yourself, having the tools that you need. So sticky notes, highlighters, pens, textbooks, notebooks, planners, all that great stuff. Maybe a candle, maybe an oil diffuser,
Mhm.
relaxing music, or reduce your distractions, whatever works for you, but you need that space that you can go and just dedicate to your studies.
Great examples there. How are you connecting and collaborating with other students in your class?
Yeah, so I'm sure engaging the class in the online setting has to be really tough for professors. I know some offer, well, not some, I'll say most offer virtual office hours to students, which is fantastic, where either the professor themselves are there at times or their TAs are there. That's great when students have questions or needs to help understand the topic. Um, I've been involved in class projects, which is not always my favorite thing, but I've learned to really embrace them because it is a great way to meet other students and see things from a different perspective when everybody's collaborating together. Um, and probably one of the best engagement opportunities I've experienced was in the Principles of Entrepreneurship class. We had to each think about a consumer need that hadn't been met and develop a business to and a business plan to satisfy that need. So we all had to set up a blog, and for each assignment, it was creating a blog post. Then the other students would go in and they would basically comment on your blog, both good and constructive feedback. And they would challenge us to look at things in a different light and maybe rethink about things. We also had to seek out real life people that may be considered an expert in the field, or they may have been part of our target demographic. So that was really interesting as well. And while that those assignments were tough, being vulnerable to others' opinions about something that you're developing and have a passion for. It was really great to learn about what it takes to open a business and be your own boss. So I think any time that a professor can take the learnings in the classroom and apply it to real life events going on in the world, you know, that's fantastic. I think it sticks with the students a lot longer.
Yeah, and I think it was Joe who was talking about how, employers are really looking for examples of that digital collaboration. So great examples there. Thanks again, Kim. I really appreciate you joining us and giving us some perspective on the student experience here. Folks, I know we're running a couple of minutes over. Just want to let you know we've got another webinar coming up next week on reducing summer melt in the age of COVID. So we hope you'll join us for that, and please subscribe if you're not, or if you have not already done so. We can ensure you get the latest on upcoming webinars, policy briefs, and promising practices. And with that, let me thank Evie, John, Brian, Diana, and Kim for helping us understand how to select and create better online college options and experiences during and after the pandemic, and how to help student success be successful in an online environment. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care now.